The Midnight Selkie, Chapter 2. Since the day of that accident, Raleigh had a fear of water to the point of extreme aquaphobia. Even the bath was a frightening place. With therapy, however, the fear was centered to actual bodies of water, rather than the bathtub and rain. Kiana almost feared that this would be so for the rest of her son's life, and all the healing that could possibly be done had been done. Malcolm was right about that, though. She was guilty in her heart. If only she had noticed sooner. If only she had been a more attentive mother, this would have not been so. Her moment of falter meant that she had indirectly robbed her son the joy of experiencing the beauty of the water. She couldn't forgive herself. So perhaps she truly was enabling him with her overbearing mothering. In the bedroom, Raleigh was wiping down and disinfecting his bed. He had a cover over his mattress and had a daily chore of changing his linens and cleaning away the smell. Kiana watched him from the doorway, waiting for a few minutes before growing a smile. "Are you all right?" "Yeah, Mom. The same thing happens every morning." "Don't let what your father said get to you, Raleigh. He's just that sort of man that has to have physical evidence to believe anything. He does love you, you know." "I guess," he muttered, "but he's not making this any easier on me. He makes it sound like I'm not even trying to get better." She hesitated. "Raleigh, do you miss home?" "Huh?" That was such an odd question to get from his mother. "Well, I guess. I miss Grandpa and all. But at least here, no one makes fun of me for not going near the water." "You don't have to go near the water, baby. But your father wants us to come home. There's really no sense in living apart." "But I still love your father and I miss him. I miss my home and I miss the ocean. I want to go home. Your father wants us to come home, so I think it would be best to do so. Your father can't leave his job. There's no call for a marine biologist way up here in the mountains." I guess I understand," he replied in a defeated tone. "I can't be selfish. We'll be going back next week. Your father will be preparing to welcome us back this week." She came over and placed a hand on his back. "It'll be all right, Raleigh. I promise. Grandpa Jim will be really happy to see you again." Raleigh gave a hesitant nod and faced his mother, forcing a smile to his face. "I'll be okay, Mom. Like you said, just because we go back doesn't mean I have to go in the water. There are lots of other things I can do. There's bike riding and skateboarding. There's the arcades, and there are museums and zoos." "I'm glad," Kiana smiled. "Come on, I'll help you get this bed made." "It's been a while, Raleigh," came the soft voice of Dr. Monroe Salem. He was a man in his 60s, but could certainly pass for a pepper-haired man in his 40s. His office was of a moderate size. It contained a modest nautical theme. At one time, he would have had to cover his many pictures when expecting a visit from Raleigh. He was pleased to see that the boy was now able to tolerate the lovely pictures. Raleigh fidgeted in his seat, finding his sneakers rather fascinating. "Yeah." "How have things been going for you?" "All right, I guess," he replied softly. "Really?" To that, Raleigh shrugged. In a way, he felt ashamed to be there. After 7 years, he had hoped this place would be a memory. Yet there he was. It was a letdown to him, and he was sure that it was the same with his parents. Perhaps it was even so with the therapist, though no one had voiced such a thing. "Do you think that your retreat did any good?" "That's hard to say, really." "How's that?" "I liked the mountains," Raleigh replied. "It was nice to get away for a while. Nobody knew me, and nobody ever had to know about me. No one said anything. I liked that." "But," Dr. Salem inquired. But it only made me happy. I knew it wasn't making Mom happy. She loves the sea, just like Dad, Uncle Jeff, Grandpa. Dad wouldn't be any use out there, and Mom missed him. I didn't like making her sad. I guess that being away didn't really fix anything. It's still the same, now that I think about it. I still get the nightmares, and well, the mountains were just another backdrop, not a solution. That's an interesting way to put it, Dr. Salem chuckled. Now the question becomes, where do you want to go from here? Raleigh twiddled his fingers and ran his tongue over his lips. He considered his feelings rather carefully. A part of me wants to just give up and accept that I am as I am. I want to just accept that I will not get better. And the other? I want to stop being afraid. I want the nightmares to stop. I want to stop the embarrassment. He finally lifted his gaze. How do I do that, Dr. Salem? The good doctor replied with a warm smile and removed his glasses from his face. That part that wants you to give up is your fear. The other part is your will and your logic. For 7 years, those fears, though unpleasant, were a familiar comfort zone to you. Take control of your situation. You need to bring yourself out of your comfort zones and master new challenges. Forgive the pun, but stagnant water will never quench your thirst. You made that up, Raleigh accused. But it's no less true, Dr. Salem replied. A stream grows into a river, the river grows into the ocean. Why those analogies? Raleigh demanded. Couldn't you have used an oak tree instead? An acorn grows into a sapling and the sapling grows into the mighty oak tree? Same concept. It's a moot point to try and utter it another way. You understand what I meant, Dr. Salem chuckled. It's been 7 years, Raleigh. Don't you think it's time that the kid gloves came off? Raleigh thought about it for a few minutes. He finally let out a long, defeated sigh. I guess. I don't like it. But it may be just the medicine you need. Dr. Salem shifted his position. Expose the phobia. Realize that it is an illogical level of fear. Take command of it, rather than letting it take command of you. You need to convince yourself that there is nothing to fear. That's easier said than done, Dr. Salem, Raleigh frowned. Yes, I never said it would be an instant or overnight fix. Time heals, and time is what it will take. Time and effort. The dinner table was rather full that night. Malcolm sat at the head of the round table. To his left was Jeff, his brother-in-law, then Captain Jim. To Malcolm's right was Raleigh, then Kiana. While the others ate and talked eagerly, Raleigh slouched in his seat, stared at the food on his plate, and poked at it with a fork. And with business as it is, I figured that I shouldn't have to settle with just the one boat. It's silly. I need another, Captain Jim explained, having been in a full conversation. The Aquaquami. She's an old lady, you know. We've had that boat a long time, Kiana smiled. Will you be retiring her soon? There are lots of memories on that boat, Jeff added. Certainly not, Captain Jim huffed. It's absurd. She's an old bird, but so is this old bird. Till her dying day, she'll always be kept as seaworthy as possible. She needs a little plastic surgery, but she also needs a friend. Beauty of a boat, Jeff mentioned. She was a real treasure. Did you find a name for her yet? Kiana asked. The Countess Aquamarine, Captain Jim announced proudly. I figure 1 or 2 more boats should have the business docks full and always ready to take on adventurers. Renew your boating license, sis, Jeff chuckled. When Dad retires, I'll be getting the Aquaquami, so we'll need someone to pilot the Countess Aquamarine. You might want to get little Raleigh trained up, too. Once we get that 3rd boat, it'll be his. I can't wait to pilot a boat again, Kiana swooned as Raleigh paled and gulped. Jeff leaned across the table, tapping it before his nephew. Isn't that great, boy? Your first boat. Get that boating license and you'll have a fantastic summer job. You are going to get back on a boat, right? Those are the tools of a sailor. You can't very well take part in this booming business without that very important thing. I don't think I'm quite ready to get back on a boat, Uncle Jeff, Raleigh replied. You'll get back into the swing of it, boy. It's just like riding a bike. Thanks, Uncle Jeff. Malcolm pointed his knife at Raleigh, hesitating before speaking, as it was rude to speak with a full mouth. He had the boy's attention as he finished his chewing and swallowed the wad. If you want to do it, then do it. Put on a life vest and a pair of water wings and get going. Captain Jim let out a laugh as he chewed, with his mouth shut, of course. He swallowed and took a swig of his root beer. Malcolm, you always were a bit of a go-getter. The problem is that this boy has been a landlubber for too long. He needs to rediscover the inherited sea legs on him. Baby steps, Kiana agreed. That's a whole lot nicer than what you did to me, Dad, Jeff muttered. You just up and threw me in. You're quite different from Raleigh, Jeff, my boy, Captain Jim laughed, patting him on the back rather hard, causing Jeff to choke and cough for a moment. Starting small is only productive if an effort is put forth, Malcolm stated flatly. I plan on putting an effort forth, Raleigh declared, perhaps with a little too much oomph. I just haven't figured out what I need to do yet. Every time I think about it, I get a little freaked out. Poor thing, Kiana soothed. Don't do that, Malcolm scolded her. Raleigh, you know what your problem is? You think too much about it. Can't help it, Raleigh replied, shrugging one shoulder. You need a distraction, Captain Jim suggested. Not a word was then said after that. The tension was a little heavy, or so it may have seemed. The only sounds now were the chews of the diners and the clanking of the silverware and plates. The silence was uncomfortable, and debatably unpleasant. Yet the final word had been said for the time being. That is how it stayed for the remainder of the evening. Raleigh was thereby overlooked from the conversation thereon out after supper. Any conversation was mostly boring grown-up stuff. But soon the early evening gave way to late evening, and the company was ready to take their leave. Final goodbye said, Captain Jim and Jeff left the family to their original unit of 3 once again. Malcolm came into the den, settling himself in his overstuffed chair and lighting a pipe. He peered across the room to the couch. Thereupon was Raleigh, sprawled long ways on his belly, reading the comic section of the local newspaper. Have you thought about the tub? I don't have a problem with the tub anymore, he replied. It's the tub. Then move on to a wading pool. Raleigh perked and glanced at him. It was surprising, really. He hadn't expected for his father to take supportive concern. We could do that. I would just hate for someone... Don't worry about what other people think, Raleigh. That's why people stay fat. What? Fat people want to be thin, so they want to go to the gym and get into shape, but they never do. They are afraid of all the people who are keeping fit. So, you don't see many fat people in a gym. They go it alone, and many never make it. If they just had the guts to go, they'd be better off. They are ashamed to show other people that they have set a goal for themselves and actually have the drive to accomplish it. Do you want to be like those wastes of people? Raleigh frowned and stared absently at the comics. No, I don't like being like that. Malcolm puffed on his pipe a few times, sending little smoke rings into the air. He studied his son carefully for a few minutes. He was such a miserable sort, wasn't he? Where did that pod person put the Raleigh that everyone had such high hopes for? Are you ashamed of me? Raleigh asked suddenly. No. I just don't understand. He pulled the pipe from his mouth. I'll tell you what. Get yourself past the wading pool. Then I'll show you something that you might very well enjoy. Like a reward? Raleigh perked. From you? Sort of. It can be rewarding, but I have a feeling that it might change some of your feelings about the water. Raleigh thought about that for a moment. His father actually getting involved could be a disaster. He was a very matter-of-fact sort and rather serious. But that being so, he could also have real, valid ideas about bringing out visible results. His father was always about, if it isn't able to be seen or touched, it isn't real in my book. It's why he didn't believe in phobias and mental problems. He was all about visuals. I'll do my best.